Good morning, our dear participants. Can you hear me? Some. Good morning. I hope you can all hear me. You're very welcome to day 2 of our training. Like I mentioned yesterday, my name is Brenda Katarikawe Opus, and I work with Uganda Export Promotion Board as a Senior Export Marketing Executive, handling both products and services. Today's training, we shall have about 4 of our panelists speaking to us, and we are still handling the different topics and services based on our export readiness checker, which most of you, if not all of you, completed while you are doing your self-assessment. So we are late. I would like to apologize, but my challenge was to start with only the 3 people who are online in time. So we gave a few more minutes so that we can have a better quorum. So today we shall have Mr. Mutahunga speaking to us about designing a practical service export strategy. We shall also have Mr. Joseph Walusimbi talking to us about basics of developing a service plan. Then we shall have someone speaking to us about monitoring and improvement of our service delivery. That will be Mr. Mohamud. Then we shall have somebody speak to us on channels of delivery. So I hope you are all ready for a start. I will just check with Mr. Mutahunga if he's ready to start us off with his topic. We want to go through introduction since we are very late, but most of us introduced ourselves yesterday, and we are the same ones who are online. The few who are not able to introduce themselves, probably later on, we shall see if we have an opportunity. Now, after all the presentations, we shall have the Q&A at the very end. So each presenter has about 20 minutes to make their presentation, and we request that you keep time so that we have more time for the questions. I'd like to encourage all our participants to post their questions in the Q&A section. Yesterday, we had most of you post in the chat section, which meant we would have to go through all the chats and then pick the specific questions to address them. So if you put them in the Q&A section, it will be easier for us to identify the questions. Okay. So Mr. Mutahunga, I hope you're with us. Mr. Mutahunga.
Good morning, team.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Mutahunga. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please. If you have a PowerPoint, you can share your screen, and we'll be able to start with you today.
Thank you very much, Brenda, and good morning, team. Incidentally, I don't have a PowerPoint. Normally, when you are going to talk about strategy, you don't need to go down to doing PowerPoint presentations, but rather, especially given the context in which this is being prepared and the time that we have, my presentation will essentially be in the form of asking rhetoric strategic questions that we need to look at as we design practical service export strategy for our companies. You were checking if I'm online. I want to confirm from you that we can proceed and start our discussion.
Thank you, sir. You can proceed, sir.
Okay. And may I request that maybe after my presentation, if there are issues to be raised, they can be raised. I attend to them and then move on to another engagement.
Yes, please. That will be possible.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So once again, good morning, colleagues. Thanks to the Uganda Export Promotion Board for organizing this, particularly in the area of services. As the ministry responsible for trade and supervision of the Uganda Export Promotion Board, we must commend you for this effort as an institution, because it is so much in line with implementing the national policy on services trade that was passed in 2017, as well as the national export development strategy, in which services trade forms one of the priorities. I've been asked to share with the participants aspects to do with designing a strategy that is of practical nature with respect to service exports for SMEs. But I must point out from the start that my presentation in terms of designing the strategy will not just be applicable to SMEs, but to all sizes of companies as well. Maybe before I get into the practical aspects of export strategy at company level, I should re-emphasize the importance of services in the Ugandan economy. Of course, as we know, the services are the biggest sector of the Ugandan economy. They have played a significant role in terms of our export composition. When we look at our export performance over the years, particularly from 2014, 15, 2019, 2020, we find, for example, in 2014-15, Uganda's service exports were 2.17 billion compared to 2.7 billion exports of merchandise. So as you can see, they are not significantly different, except when you move to the later years like 2017-18, where you have merchandise exports of 3.5 billion and service exports of only 1.8 billion. And then 2018-19, you have 3.9 billion of merchandise exports and 2.1 billion of service exports. Now, we, of course, appreciate that these figures could be significantly increased for services exports, and that would provide us an opportunity as a country to get more jobs and more foreign exchange, and of course, all the good things that come with increased earnings. It is on that premise that the government put in place the National Policy on Services Trade in 2017, followed it up with the National Export Development Strategy, in which services trade is a significant a sector of consideration. And around the same time, the Uganda Export Promotion Board reconfigured itself to focus on services export as well. So this training or discussion is really in that context, and we want to appreciate it. Now, getting to the core issue for today's discussion, when we talk about service exports, I think it is important that we quickly remind ourselves of how services are traded. Why is it important to do this? It's because services are intangible, and quite often you may find yourself trading in a service, uh, but either you yourself do not know that you are trading in a service, or if you know, others don't know that you're actually trading in a service, um, including policymakers, to the extent that even when policies are being made, some of the incentives, initiatives aimed at, promoting services trade may be left out. So we trade international in services under four modes. The first mode being cross-border movement, or cross-border mode, where the trade takes place from one country to another, and this is essentially only if the service itself crosses the border without the movement of persons. Now, such instances may include information or advice passing or being transmitted by electronic mail, or say cargo transportation and the like. Um, and in this mode, the service provider does not necessarily have established presence in the country where the service is consumed. Some of the examples we may have is, for example, a local firm here prepares a market study for a foreign client that is interested in getting into the Ugandan market, and then that study is forwarded by email or any other electronic. I'm sure that some of the people we have in the audience have done this or involved in this, or some could be interested in getting to this at some point. The other mode is the consumption abroad, which relates to the services that are consumed by nationals of one country in another where the service is supplied. And of course, what this implies is that the service is consumed by or supplied by to consumers outside their country of residence. The best example you'll have here is tourism, because when tourists come here, they have done consumption abroad, and therefore tourism, the earnings from tourism essentially are part of our export earnings. Some other examples, if you have, say, foreign executives coming to be trained in here, they have come consume a service in Uganda, and we do consider that as that. Then the third mode is of commercial presence, where you establish uh, where a company or a service supplier crosses the border and has a commercial presence abroad through which the service is provided. And good examples in here may include the banks that we have here, the foreign bank, construction companies that have established bases here, and the right. Then the fourth mode um, is the movement of natural persons, which applies when natural persons like you or I may stay temporarily in another country for purposes of supplying the service. For example, they are self-employed or employees of service suppliers. Some of the examples here may include a local training firm here sending trainers abroad to deliver, say, executive training. But I must uh, clarify that this mode does not include where an individual moves abroad to look for employment. You must move there when you already have it. And as you will appreciate, this mode is usually uh, so much influenced by immigration policy. And you'll find that at the time of doing the strategy at company level, the mode in which you are going to supply your service will be relevant for you to consider, because it is in that context that you should be able to understand uh, the regulations that you have to deal with. Now, um, as you move to design the strategy for getting into these markets, I should point out that as a country, just like we've done for goods, there are some preferential trade arrangements we've entered into. Most of them usually cover goods so much where we have tariff reductions, but in some instances, We have also covered the services, particularly in the context of the East African community. Um, bring the same in terms of discussions at COMESA level, then some bits of them at international level, particularly under the World Trade Organization services waiver. Why am I talking about this? It is critically important because the schedules of commitments or the offers in services that are given, the restrictions or regulations that are given when these preferential arrangements are being negotiated or signed are useful for you to know which market to target. And you wouldn't want to get into a market where, or attempt to get into a market where the restrictions are too prohibitive for you to get in. Now, let's quickly get into the issues or the questions that I would encourage companies to consider when looking at designing um, their services export strategies. Number one, it is important that you establish the credibility of your firm. Why is this important? Service consumers are so mindful of the credibility of the service provider. And when we talk about establishing the credibility of the firm, I think it is critically important that one, you do an objective verification of your capabilities. You may also want to look at how are you going to um, impact the credibility of your firm into your potential consumers or customers. You may consider things like public appearances, your website, professional licenses or certifications, ISO 9000 certification or registration may be a very useful thing. Are there any awards of excellence that would get to project the credibility of your company? Are you listed in any directories that service consumers may be uh, not looking at? And this is quite common in essentially all service sectors. If you have used say TripAdvisor, you know what I'm talking about in terms of hotels, places to visit, and so on and so forth, because these ones help to project the credibility of the company so that it is easier for you to sell your service. It may also be useful as you try to increase the credibility of your firm to look at strategic alliances with known industry leaders. And here I may want to give the example of our law firm, which I must say I'm pleased with because of recently we have seen a number of Ugandan law firms partnering with the foreign reputable international law firms, and this increases the ability of Ugandan law firms to export their services and also to build their credibility. There are things on how do you present your image, what kind of promotional materials do you uh, use, how do you get recommendations from former customers. We have seen reviews uh, done online. I think this is critically important, especially in as far as helping getting those uh, reviews to build the credibility of your firm. You need to also look at how do you leverage on special relationships, how do you make referrals to others, and consider working as a subcontractor in some instances. So overall, the first thing you need to look at is how do I establish the credibility of my firm to my potential customers. And the beauty with service is that globally, everybody essentially will be a potential customer. So, as companies interested in exporting services from Uganda, first thing I would urge you to look at is establish the credibility of your company. Then the second aspect would be looking at after you have established the credibility of your firm, how do you promote your capability? That's again a very important element for you to we talk about promoting capabilities, I think it's important as a service exporter that you develop a world-class message. You look at what marketing tools are you going to use. When you have done that as a service exporter or a service provider, it is important that you have at least online presence. I earlier on talked about the website, and this should be done in such a way that it validates your competence. You need to look at what kind of website do you have, and how how does it promote your capabilities. Quite often, I'm sure some of us have visited some websites and you feel like you shouldn't visit again, or you shouldn't deal with the company in question because of what you find on the website. So, as a service exporter, um, reaching out to the world online is a very useful thing that you may need to, to get into consideration. Then you may need also to look at mass marketing through mailing lists, through online advertisement, and so on and so forth. But the gist of the issue here is promote your capability. The third element that is again important for a successful export marketing strategy for services at company level is successful networking. You need to, uh, within your strategy, have a strong element of successful networking with the other service providers, with the potential customers, with the regulators, and so on and so forth. The importance of success networking successfully is that it will help you to create advocates, but also widen the scope of potential customers for the service that you are providing. So, as a strategy exporting your services, ask yourself, how can I successfully network, and then build that. Now, in the context of successful networking, also ensure that you have follow-up strategies. Don't just build networks and give them there, but have follow-up strategies. The other key element of a successful export or a practical service export strategy will need to address, how do you as a company successfully create strategic alliances. Now, strategic alliances are very important. They are very critical. They open you to capital. They open you to technology. They open you to knowledge. They open you to market. So you need to also have within your strategy an element of creating strategic alliances. You need to then look at who and how do you select potential partners in markets abroad, which means you must know the market you are targeting. Move to look at how do you select the potential partners there. You might also look at partnering with multinationals in here, in our own country here. You may partner with a multinational company in here, and that can help you to reach in other markets where that multinational company is already uh, uh, operating. Some of these, in terms of building partnerships, you'll find that you need to do a memorandum of understanding with these partners. In short, the partnership should always be formal. Then once you build the partnership, always ensure that it is successful. Don't build the partnership today and tomorrow or next month it collapses. Because the moment it collapses, it means that your credibility goes. And remember, one of the other issues we talked about was an issue of credibility. Um, Another element of the strategy should look at, how do I get funding? How do you raise financing? Of course, um, I think I don't need to emphasize this. We all know the importance of financing for uh, any business to be successful and to operate, whether it is in the services area or not. I'm aware there are a number of international financial institutions funded projects in the area of services, and one may need to start or to look at the various databases. The World Bank, I'm aware, has some of those, particularly when it comes to consultancies. They have, I think, website .con or data, DATCON, something like that. That database of consultants, which looks at companies with 5 or more consultants. And usually they ask that local partnerships are followed in instances where projects are funded by them. And this happens with other international financial institutions, such as the Caribbean Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, African Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, and so on and so forth. So one may need to look at how do you, as the service provider, if of course falls within your area, how do you get to tap into these resources? Then, of course, once you have done this, the other elements that you would need to include in your strategy, um, the options on how do you now get export-related financing. So this is somehow related to the previous aspect I just talked about. The previous one was specific international financial institutions and the projects they fund. But here I'm looking at export-related financing specifically in terms of you need to look at your debt financing mechanism. In short, how do you raise financing from local financial institutions? You need to look at how do you finance travel for export market development, because inevitably you also have to travel to develop your markets. How do you manage your cash flows for export projects? Critically important, because any company or business without proper cash flow management will uh, usually run into problems sooner or later. Then the other element within this is what are the methods that you are going to consider to reduce financial exposure. In short, how do you ensure that you keep yourself a going concern, reduce your exposure so that you keep yourself afloat? The next element I'm going to share with you is on now look inward, look into your own enterprise, assess your export readiness. In short, are you ready to export services? Do you have adequate resources for support the export? Are you going to supply a competitive service? In short, when you get to the other market, are you going to be competitive, or are you going to go into the market and fail there, or fail to deliver on the contract that you may have been given? Are you going to meet your client's expectations? And the many other things like you were asked in the export readiness assessment. So at that point in your strategy, it's again important for you uh, to be very objective in assessing your export readiness. In short, don't get into the pool if you don't know how to swim. Then lastly, another key element I will encourage enterprises seeking to export services to include in their services export strategies is develop is an element of developing export market. At the macro level, development of export markets is done by government, the Export Promotion Board being our specialized agency. At the policy level, we do the negotiations for market opening and the like. But at company level, you now have to get down and operationalize what we've done at the macro level. So when I talk about developing export market, I don't want to be misunderstood by some people who may say this is a role of government. I'm now talking about developing export market at company level, because this will be unique to companies depending on what service you are offering and which market you are targeting. And the elements of developing Export markets will include market information and intelligence. So you must know the market that you're trying to get into, its behavior, its characteristics, stability, outlook, and so on and so forth. You need to look at the network exporting model as well. How are you going to get into that market? Are you going to use networks that side? Are you going to just bump in there or not? Look at what suits you and take a decision on that. Um, as you develop markets, like I said at the start, we have different regulations for different services in different markets. A country may require that if you are going, for example, to have commercial presence in their country, you must have maybe 20% local ownership, maybe 50% local ownership, or maybe not employ certain people in who are foreigners, and so on and so forth, like we see here. So you need to look at how am I going to deal with the different markets? What are the regulatory requirements for the different markets for the kind of service I want to export? And how do I deal with it? That's important. Then you also need to consider how you're going to price your services as you develop the export market. The next element is you also need to look at, for example, may you need to work with interpreters or not. If you are going to say you are a tour company, you want to market Uganda, you want to market your company in a Spanish-speaking country or French-speaking country, and you send there somebody very fluent in English and Swahili, you can be so sure that you are, cutting into the air. You will not get anything because you have not prepared yourself well at the strategy level in terms of developing the export market. Then you also need, at that point, ask yourself and answer how you're going to handle temporary business entry issues. Again, this goes back to the regulatory aspects. Then, lastly, in this context, like we have always advised, even when it comes to a good trade, it is always a good practice that as you begin export planning or refine your existing strategies, you should never overlook what you can do in your own country to get a good start. It is strategically useful that you use the home country, you use Uganda as your training base before you can even venture out. Usually, your foreign customers provide the best guarantee for your competence because of their prior experience with your services. So, as you move to venture out, um, don't overlook the domestic market. It is very important. I see I've used slightly over 20 minutes, and I want to stop here. I think that from a strategic brand design perspective, the key issues that would need to be involved or included in a strategy for marketing services at enterprise level have been captured in this. And I thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Mtahunga, our Commissioner, External Trade. We really appreciate the very detailed presentation. We thank you for the insight of the different areas that you have given us. If I could just briefly go through what Mr. Mtahunga has spoken to. He spoke about credibility of the firm as one of the questions you should consider. He also looked at strategic alliances, make sure you have the right people you're dealing with. He spoke about your company images to make sure that you actually get a proper company image, and that is through the different either recommendations or the way you present your company across. He talked about how to handle referrals. Many of us get referrals. Sometimes as Export Promotion Board, we are also contacted and we refer different buyers to you. But the way you handle it matters, and that is something that you need to plan for. He also talked about networking as networking successfully. And he said that you must make sure that you get the right networks to build your company. Another aspect he spoke about was how you should make sure you know your market before you get there. This is very key because then you prepare yourself. One thing that we have also found, which he mentioned, is the aspect of being formal and doing agreements and MOUs with your partners or potential buyers. We have issues of a number of companies reporting being cheated in the market, and when we try to find out, they are lacking in terms of how they have put their agreements in place. Mr. Mtaunga also spoke about finances. Now, yesterday we had something on this, and one of the key issues, Mr. Mtaunga, that came out in yesterday's discussion on finances was the aspect of services not being having proper products with the banks. Banks currently still seem to shy away from giving credit to service export companies. So this is something we probably will discuss with you as we go forward. The other aspect Mr. Mtaunga spoke about is development of your markets. Now, at Export Promotion Board, we do the macro part, but you as a company, you also need to play a big role. And finally, he talked about the domestic market, which is a very key training ground for you to make sure that you serve the domestic client first as you prepare yourself for exports. So I think that really puts us in the right mood and in the right direction for the rest of the trainings today. If there are any questions, I haven't seen any questions specifically from Mr. Mtahunga yet. But if there are any, I would like to request that you quickly post them into our Q&A section so that we have him respond before he leaves us. Like I told you, Mr. Mtaunga is our commissioner for external trade in Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. And this is the ministry that is in charge of the development and building of exports. So if you have any questions, please raise your questions now. Okay, I don't seem to be getting any questions, so my assumption is either there are none or we'll get them as we go along. So Mr. Mtaunga, thank you so much. We shall let you go at your own time. As we proceed now to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. If questions come in at any point, you can always get back to me. Maybe I'll log on again if for time allows and respond.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
Okay, so our next speaker will be Mr. Joseph Walusimbi. Mr. Walusimbi will introduce himself fully. He has worked with Uganda Export Promotion Board in different projects, but he is currently also a consultant with ITC. He will give us a presentation on planning and analysis, a little more detail of what Mr. Mtaunga has been speaking about, and then also specifically how you should develop an export plan. At Export Promotion Board, we encourage you to plan and actually document your plan, because this then helps us also to understand the direction you're taking your company. Many of us start businesses and our plan is in our head and we want to go with it as such. Now then you want us, the different other stakeholders who are going to support your business to also understand the plan the way you understand it. But unfortunately, it is not written. So that becomes a challenge for us as third parties, as people who are supporting you, to be able to understand the direction. So, Mr. Walusimbi, you're very welcome to highlight more details on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, for inviting me. I hope you can hear me well. Okay. Yes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joseph Walusimbi. I'm a consultant with the International Trade Center, and I am involved in a project which is really to do with export readiness. And currently, I'm handling a sector which is really information technology and information technology enabled services. So I have been dealing with a number of small to medium sized enterprises that are in that sector. And really my topic today is around what I do with those companies. So without much ado, I'll just, let me see if I can screen share. I hope you can see my screen. Brenda, if you can confirm, please.
Yes, we can see your screen. Just put a full screen. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Put, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Yes, thanks.
Yes, so the topic today is really about planning and analysis, and in particular basics of developing a services export plan, the plan writing skills and components, and how to implement that plan. So I'm going to make this presentation, I'm going to try and see that I try to make it more than theoretical, so that you can be able to take away the nuggets that you can immediately start to implement in your organizations. So basically, an export strategy is to help you identify elements in your company that you can improve to enhance your competitiveness, first and foremost. Secondly, is to allocate within your organizations the responsibilities of your staff who would be involved in this export agenda, and then also to be able to evaluate results, whether you're actually achieving what you set to do. And three is such plans also help you to get financial assistance and to indicate to lenders and investors that you have a serious approach, because once you decide to export, that means that within your organization, there is seriousness, there is organization, and there is intent, strategic intent. So there would be lenders who would need to see that. So I'll start off with a model, which is in 4 steps. Gradually, this is something I hope that you can all take note of, because without going through these steps, then it would be hard for you to really achieve your export agenda. So the first step is really to describe your internal controllable core competencies, and that is really your strong points within your organizations, but as well as the weaknesses and the challenges that you face. This is very important because it sets a pace to really gauge whether you are at a point where you can handle exports. Okay, but I'll go through that in detail. Let me first do a quick rundown through the steps. Step 2 is to prepare your organization for foreign market entry by researching and describing the uncontrollable elements as well as the opportunities that are in those markets, so that you can be able to now match your strengths and weaknesses together with those opportunities and threats that are in the markets that you are considering to go into. Step 3 is now to analyze really the entry options that you can take on, and identify an approach, and also to see how you can attract and cooperate with potential foreign export partners. I'm sure speakers who came before me have touched on a number of these things. So I'm hoping that this will be able to give you a sort of, to conceptualize this in a nutshell. Step 4 is then to develop an export project and action plan, because once you have gauged all those issues, you should then be able to put a plan together and to also decide which markets you're eventually going to go into. So going back to step one, which I'll now go into detail, when you're doing an audit of your company in relation to export strategy, it's very important, first of all, to understand what kind of business are you really in. So that's really the general description of your company. What is your mission? What are your objectives currently? Okay, before you now start thinking about exporting to Kenya or to the Netherlands or to Spain, it is what exactly are your objectives as a company? Okay, and by objectives, you can talk about financial, you can talk about operational, etc. Then, what are your current results? How are you operating right now? Okay, and remember I told you that this plan would also be seen by the would-be lenders or the would-be partners. So it's important they understand how you're performing currently. Then describe your current market strategy. Where are you operating right now? And in what position are you within the market that you're operating in? What are your skills? What capacity does your organization have? It's very important to really go through step one in detail. I would have gone through the various aspects to look at in detail, but this is not for this session. It can always be shared after. But step one is really about internal, a look internally in your capabilities, how you're performing, and what exactly is your current strategy. Step two is now the foreign markets. Okay. You need to, I would imagine that depending on which service you are into, you probably have an idea of the kind of countries you want to go into. So you need to do a search on these countries. For example, market size. How much potential does that country have in terms of taking up your services should you decide to go in those markets? What are the trends currently in that market? For example, if you are dealing with like the sector that I'm currently focusing on, which is IT, what is happening in those markets? Do they have the needs for your service? Okay. What are the buyer requirements? This is very key. Legal, non-legal, the standards they enforce, certifications that they may require before you enter into those markets, etc. Are there tariff barriers or non-tariff barriers? Are there preferential arrangements for your kind of services? What's the trade structure in that market? And how can you be able to enter into that market? The market entry options. Okay. What's the competition? Are you the only one that would be serving the market, or are there many others who export to that market? Or even within that market, maybe there are those who have similar services like yours. You need to find out. On step two, I will give you some ideas of the kind of places that you can go to search in those markets to be able to get this kind of information. Step three is really now about the decision making. Remember, in step one, you're able to identify your strengths and weaknesses as an organization. And then in step two, you've been able to identify the opportunities and threats out there, and specifically in relation to the kind of markets you want to go into. So you need to map these strengths with the opportunities, strengths and threats, weaknesses with opportunities, weaknesses and threats. Okay? Because you could find that there's a strength you have and there's an opportunity in the market. So you can actually jump onto that straight away. But maybe you have a weakness and there's a great threat in that market and decide, you know what? For that particular market, it's a no-go. We will not go there because we are weak in this area. And again, there are immense threats in that market. So it does not make sense for us to actually export to that particular market. So step one and two give you the information that you can then use in step three. Step four, excuse me, your plan. Now, in this particular case, I call it a sales and marketing plan, but of course, there are operational aspects, there are financial aspects, there are technical aspects, but it all boils down to commercial, because what are you in business for? You're in business to make money. So whatever your technical person does, whatever your operational person does, it will still boil down to being able to make sales, being able to market, knowing very well that you have the capability internally
So the sales and marketing plan is now that step that you do, the last step. And we have what we call a product market combination. For example, what product do you have and to which market do you now want to avail that product? What strategy are you going to use to enter into that market? What instruments are you going to use marketing it? So what product is it? At what price will you put it? How will you promote it? Which channels will you use? Who are the partners in that market that you will use to be able to bring in your services, etc. And then an action plan. This is very key because if you do a plan and you don't have details of who exactly is going to do what, when, by what date, using what resources, etc., then that is not a plan. That is a very important step that you have to take as an organization. Okay, you could give it a timeline of about 24 months. Don't go too far because the further you go, the less definite you are about whatever you're planning. So keep it to about 2 years, at most 3, to be able to have a concise and actionable plan. Now, I would like to dwell on step 2 because I know step 1, which is really about internal, looking into the organization internally, that is pretty simple, I would think. And then step 3 is pretty simple to do, but it's step 2, which has to do with analyzing your target markets. That is very important, and I'm sure you have questions on how to be able to do that. So I would like to dwell into that a little bit, if you don't mind, because you want to find out, if I'm to go to France, if I'm to send my services to Zambia or to South Africa, exactly what kind of things do I need to do to be able to get the information that I'm being told I have to get? How do I get information on market attractiveness, competitive power, buyer requirements? What are the critical success factors in this case for that particular country? Well, in step 2, so this is a summary of what I'm saying. Basically, the conclusions are really opportunities and threats in those markets. Step 2 is the critical part I would imagine for you, ladies and gentlemen, because when you approach the Uganda Export Promotion Board and went through the export readiness assessment, you were really looking at how can you help us to be able to study those markets and get the kind of information we need so that we make a decision whether to go there or not. So this is an example. If you're looking at trade structure, to understand the size of the market, the growth, the developments in that market, the suppliers, the producers, the resellers in that market, the competition, what kind of supply chains, etc. There are areas where you can go to find this kind of information. Okay, so my question then to you at this point in time, do you have current sources of market information to the country for the countries that you want to enter into? Or even maybe there are some countries you're in, but you went in by default. But for you to be able to stay there sustainably, it is important to get that information. So where would you start looking for this information? Okay, there are a number of sources. There are quite many, but of course, depending on the market you're in is what will determine which sources you need to go to. But there are many statistical databases like Eurostat. You can go to the World Trade Organization. It has information. International Trade Center, which I'm a part of, has information. So you can get market reports, trade association reports, trade press. There are industry experts that you can Google who are specialists in those markets. You can attend trade fairs if you have the resources to do so. So the internet has a lot of information. It's really about you sitting down and being able to articulate the kind of information you need, and then you check out those sources. So there are links. For example, I talked about Eurostat. There is a link there. This information can be some of it is already with the Uganda Export Promotion Board, so you can always get it from there. The EU Help Desk, International Trade Center, etc. And then CBI. I like this one. CBI. It's an interesting one. And it's really about opportunities in Europe, particularly. And if you don't mind, I'll just switch a bit, and I take you to so that you see what I'm talking about in CBI. Just hold on. So this is the website for CBI, and it's particularly for European markets. And it's, for
Joseph,
example, I want market information in a particular country.
hello,
I would,
Joseph. We cannot
sorry?
see what here. We can't see the CBI. We can't see it.
Oh, you can't?
No.
I thought I was sharing screen. Just hold on.
So we can still see your presentation.
Just hold on. Okay. Let me stop the share and try to share again.
Okay.
Just hold on. Let me do that again. Can you see that now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. So this is the CBI website, and I went to market information. And for example, if you want to, if I might scroll down here, now this is really commodities, grains, coffee, apparel, etc. But if I take you, for example, to IT here, which is outsourcing, I clicked on that, and then I'm able to see what is the opportunities in Europe. What is the demand for that sector? Which trends offer opportunities? What requirements should my IT-related products comply with? Okay, tips to find buyers, tips to do business, etc. This information is there. You know, even they show you some case studies of Senegal and Uganda. So there are a lot of sources on this website, particularly for Europe, okay, that you can go to and be able to get this kind of information for step 2. So this is just one of them. Let me stop sharing this screen, and because it appears like whenever I am. So let me go back to the presentation. So that is an example of a place where you can get particularly for Europe, okay? And so for those who are into IT, etc., you can go to various places. Then also Ernst & Young has some information, Deloitte. Oh, there's a lot of information out there to help you with step 2, okay? As you can see, doingbusiness.org. Then for USA, those who are interested in America, there's export.gov, country and sector studies worldwide, there's that one. So there's a lot of information. All you have to do is ask. Don't struggle, ask, and we can guide you. Okay, how to find buyers. You can, there are trade fairs that happen a lot, although I think now during this COVID era, maybe there have been some changes on people being able to go for trade fairs, but I'm sure there's some virtual conferences going on as well. Directories, etc. Market research companies, Euromonitor, Data Monitor, Mintel, there are many. So do not struggle to find information by yourself. Please ask someone at the Uganda Export Promotion Board, and you should be able to get this information. Okay, so again, I'm going to stop here and go to another document because it appears whenever I try to change. So I want to then summarize this for you. Just give me a moment. I have many documents open. So those 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, and 4, as I said, it's an audit of the organization on whether you can actually be able to do export, market analysis, what are the opportunities and threats. We've talked about that, and I've shown you sources of information. Step 3 is now to conclude and say, okay, we have got this information. Now, question is, after we have done our internal look within our organization, and now that we have done the market research for the kind of markets we want to go into, can we actually export to these markets? Which ones? You might have listed and said maybe Kenya, South Africa, Netherlands, France, and you realize that Kenya is an easy option, and maybe Netherlands an easy option, but perhaps France is not and South Africa is not. Step 3 is when you make that decision. Okay. Then step 4 is when you now go and do the detailed plan on exactly the things you're going to do from the time you decide which product you're going to use to the point when you actually start to export. And you have to allocate responsibilities for that. So this is what I've been talking about in a nutshell. Okay, the 4 basic steps in export strategy. Audit your organization, step 1. Do your target country analysis as step 2. Conclude on which markets you will go to and which particular services you're going to export to those markets. And step 4, how exactly are you going to end up going to those markets? Perhaps you need to enhance your services first. Maybe you need to give responsibilities to particular people. Then maybe you also need to have a particular team that's going to handle it as a project on its own, away from business as usual. Then, so this model again is available because some of you might be, there are some people who are not good with details of a lot of text. But when you look at a model, this makes it simple for you to comprehend. So, really, this is the model. This is it. That is it, really. Okay. Whatever I've talked about this morning is summarized in that model. Okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. So, but at the end of the day, sorry, I have to scroll through this quickly. At the end of the day, it's really about you being able to make the decision. So, what do you want to achieve when you export? Can you tell us in terms of financials that if you're to start exporting in 2021, you want to be making this amount of money or this amount of profits from that market, etc. You have to be articulate when you're deciding on your objectives. Who are you going to partner with in those markets to be able to take your services there? Those are the kind of questions that will be answered by the plan. Which instruments are you going to use to market and get your services into those countries? Who is going to do what, when, using what resources? That, in a nutshell, is what should be in your plan. So just to do a quick checklist, according to this presentation, the things that I should have answered are related to your target markets. I think that is something I've talked about. Organizational capabilities, I've talked about the skills, the capacities that you currently have in your organization. I've talked about communication, which is really about marketing. How do you intend to to promote your product in that market? Now, there are certain operational issues that I've not gone deeply into, but I will just mention them here, that the quality and the quantity of your inputs to be able to, for you to be able to generate services is very key. Remember, I talked about that there are certain buyer requirements in those markets, like certain standards, certifications that could be required for your kind of service. So you have to be, internally, you have to make sure you have the capability to produce services that meet those standards. Then there's the issue of timely production. Okay. I'll give you an example. Once you enter into a European market and you decide to partner with an organization that would more or less be like your distribution channel, make sure that you meet their requirements in terms of timing. If you agree with them that you're going to be availing your service in a certain frequency, maintain that frequency, because the moment you lapse, that is a failure, and it could actually make you lose that market. Selection of distribution channels is covered in step 2 when you are doing the market analysis, and in step 3 when you're deciding to do whether it's a no or a no-go or a go. Also, key is financial projections. Ladies and gentlemen, planning at the end of the day is about achieving our overall organizational objective of making money. That's what it boils down to, making money. So make sure that you put financial projections. And by projections, it means how much money do you want to make in those markets? and what is it going to cost you to be able to avail your service in that market. So I'm hoping that this has been able to put into context what other speakers have been talking about, because it all has to go down into the plans. So thank you very much. I hope that this has been a fruitful session. Over to you, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Joseph Walusimbi. I think that was a really full cup for us. It was so insightful. I'm sure many of you now are thinking through your export plans and wondering, what exactly do I need to reorganize and change, and what haven't I done, and so on. And so when you come to Export Promotion Board and we ask you, do you have a plan? Can we have a look at your export plan? You're now better placed to be able to do that. I will not go through what Joseph has taken us through. I think you have all got the full grasp of what it is. So I'd like us to go to the next presentation. Joseph, I hope you're still with us, because we will have definitely questions for you at the end of our.
Yes, I.
Okay, good. All right, so now I will ask our next speaker, who is going to talk to us about monitoring and improvement, Mr. Muhammad. Mpezamhigo. Mr. Muhammad Mpezamhigo, you're very welcome to take us through the presentation on how we should monitor and track the quality of our services, because sometimes we think whatever we have put ahead of us or put on the market is what our buyers want, and yet there's a lot to be able to make it that kind of quality. So you're very welcome to today's
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know whether I am audible enough.
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and the ED and the Exports Board promotion team, and my panelists and the other participants. Let me try to share a screen. If there are network issues, then I will disable that. You allow me a minute to see. Is that okay, Brenda? Hello?
Not yet, not yet. Try again.
Okay, can I try to share?
Yes, please. Please try to.
Okay, just in case there are issues. Let me see. I think it is not. I seem not to have access here. Hello?
Yes, please.
I think I seem to. Okay, it is asking a security question. So I think let me just go to the presentation. I think if I'm audible, I can continue.
Yes, you're very audible, sir.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I will be able to give you the PowerPoint at the appropriate time. It's ready. I want to thank the board, first of all, for giving me this opportunity to be one of the facilitators, and I thank you so much. I want to say I am from a service sector. This is education service, and specifically higher education. And so what is happening is that this training, online training, is, I think, a very good opportunity, and I want to thank the board for thinking about it. Now, what is very clear is the fact that whereas we may be talking about products and things like that, the service approach is not very much different. I want to recognize the role by my previous panelists and monitoring and to keep track of quality service delivery is it cuts across. And for me, this is so critical. And so in the next 20 minutes, I hope I can be able to help our participants to understand and have the ability to define monitoring. I know this is a very popular word and many people use it given their own context. Secondly, we should be able to understand how monitoring impacts on quality service delivery. So I wish to say that the third aspect of this is I will give some highlights on how to develop track improvement tools. And then we should have a capacity, we should be in a position to develop our capacity to enhance our own monitoring and evaluation for improvement of service delivery. And this is going to help us as key stakeholders. And then I will end with just a very brief proposal of what I'm calling a monitoring implementation plan or framework. I want to put this discussion in context. Remember, this online assessment training is being looked at in under eight elements. And I'm so happy that you arranged the presentation in such a manner that I come towards the end, actually, because monitoring cuts across. So the 8 elements, just for a recap, for the last 2 days, we discussed strategy, marketing, production, financing issues, channels of delivery, organizational capabilities, very exciting, monitoring and improvement, which is I'm handling now, and then the last one is planning and analysis. Now, I want to thank the ED because he put it in very, very good perspective. He defined so many aspects. And so my monitoring will be able to sort of give a broader picture because it is pre, during, and post, the monitoring aspect. And what is to monitor? To monitor really is to try and find out whether there is a collective result and outcome of the delivery of goods and services or both. So you are monitoring, it's like you've set something rolling and you'd like to see whether the anticipated targets are being met. And so your systems must be in a position, whatever trade you are in, it should be in a position to say, I set to deliver a certain service X, like for us, we are providing higher education, Kampala International University. So our target is we want to deliver a graduate in a market. We also want to recruit students from abroad. We also want to export our own people who we have trained, through collaborations and partnerships. Many people do not know that one brings in a lot of foreign exchange. No wonder we were actually the best award winner for 2019. So then the second aspect is that it's not on, whereas Uganda Exports Promotions Board is looking at export of services and products. In monitoring, you should be interested also in what I'm calling the import component. You see, in order for you to export a service, you must also import certain services and goods and products. For example, in order for you to have excellent facilities, training facilities as an education institution, you should be able to monitor. For example, if you are training medicine, your labs, the dummies that are coming in, the training equipment and instruments, are they going to actually deliver to the satisfaction of the clients? So there is the import-export balance that we need also to observe. Then we need to put in mind that there's an entire process. And so we need to look at all the terms and conditions that actually yield to what we call a contract. Many people, when you talk about a contract, they think about rent, they think about so many other things. But your mutual understanding between the client and you, the service provider, forms what we call an agreement. I'll give you a simple example. When we admit students, we are providing higher education service. That admission letter is actually a contract. The terms and conditions within that contract form our relationship. That is why you'll find some students even raise court cases. There are issues. When you employ an international expert, you are bringing in expatriates to be able to equip Ugandans and non-Ugandans with very good quality education. You have got to ensure that the contracts that are actually negotiated are implemented. Otherwise, what will happen, you'll bring staff and then the attrition rate, the dropout rates will be very high. So you need to monitor the implementation of all these contracts between your clients and the people who are actually delivering that service. You know, it's like a university is a mini factory. We process these students from entry through graduation, and even post-graduation, when they go and get employment, they still carry the image. So you can imagine that even beyond what you would term as a service already provided, your interest is different. You will be able to say, okay, I think this is something that I'm happy about, and therefore the contract is being implemented. And so we are interested in seeing this as in a comprehensive manner. Last point on this, to understand the definition, ladies and gentlemen, the whole cycle, as I have mentioned, is comprehensive. And I want us just to summarize it in a way of understanding what monitoring tech is all about. Look at it as a chain. And in logistics management, and the ED, I think, is a guru there with some of the colleagues who are in the board, the staff, and also technocrats who are hired. A chain leads to delivery of your service. So if there's any snapping or interruption along any component of the stage, then it will lead to a failure in contractual performance. You know, you are in travel and tours, you have booked people to come, tourists, and the transport manager who is supposed to pick the tourists from the airport goes to sleep, or his phone is off. The tourists arrive at the airport. You can be sure, even if they'll be delivered 2 hours later, that is a tent, and a tent on your service provision, and that needs to be monitored. So look at every component of the chain. Some people call it, you know, a chain link, chain supply, or whatever they call it, supply chain rather. Look at every component. So the monitoring is not just in global terms, but it has to be specific. So I think that is really critical. There are 4 questions I want us to answer or think about. 1, as an organization, as a company, as a parastatal, as an institution, do you have a system to monitor your services to ensure 3 things: security, optimization, and an experience from your clients? Do you have a system to monitor? Do you have, the second question is, do you have a well-emphasized customer satisfaction or whatever they call it, complaint satisfaction and tracking, so that you get feedback from your clients? Do you have that? And then third, do you have a well laid out set of procedures, quality standards, you know, what you are calling now SOPs? By the way, very many people now appreciate the word SOPs because of COVID-19. Standard operating procedures, I think, is derived from factory bases and industries, you know, especially from the engineering aspects and medical aspects. But are they clear to your employees? The people you are putting in this like conveyor belt to deliver a service, do they know every bit, the nitty-gritty of the procedures? Lastly, how do you monitor the implementation of the procedures and policies? So these questions should guide you as a company who is interested in export of services. And if you don't answer them prior to engaging in business, then you are bound to land into some trouble. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, our moderator, to discuss just something about monitoring and evaluation framework. Now, to answer those questions, you need a framework that is focused on monitoring indicators. Ladies and gentlemen, if you spend 75% of your time planning, you will be able to generate more than 100% success. Many people jump on board, go into business, go in trade. You know, like I'll give an example now. There's so many online things that are happening, but as a company, how ready are you? You may be dealing in trade that involves a lot of money exchange. Have you thought about a framework that would help to secure your systems, online transactions? So you must have a well-designed, focused M&E, monitoring and evaluation framework. Then two, you must have a detailed implementation strategy, you know. And lastly, you need to provide manuals and keep on retraining, what other people call continuous professional development. You know, you may hire a very nice guy who is superb with 10 years experience in logistics management, and you put him as the boss, but is he aware of the actual vision and mission of your company? Does he know? Does he or she know? You may have worked in similar organizations, but you have your own blueprint. So this is something that you need to design an implementation framework for monitoring and implementation. Now, here are just 8 points which you should take note of. Number one, it is so important that you establish a unit, a specific monitoring and improvements unit in your company. It will cost you money. You will ask why. You know, this is the head of this section, the other one is the head of this section. I mean, they can have their own internal monitoring mechanisms, but we must have an oversight unit that looks at the quality assurance of what you are doing. And in universities, for example, we are required to have a full directorate with an entire team of staff that focuses on supervising what other people are doing. So without that, you may want to say, no, this is the role of the general manager, the MD. No, but when we go into operations, as I've already mentioned, a single link in the chain, if it gets some bit of rust or breaks or there's a leakage in the chain, then you have a very big dilemma. So establish one. Two, and even when you are budgeting, there must be a budget component that goes to monitoring and improvements, because then you'll plow your money and of course you may not break even immediately. Number two, please identify all activities that unit is supposed to know. Every head of unit must know the activities that are supposed to lead to the delivery. Look, we are talking about now these internal dynamics. We are looking at that internal dynamics that help you to ensure that the process flow is being identified, but the activities, they must be in black and white. Third, you must have competent human resource and units that are going to house these people. They are all focused. You have a very big chunk of objective to achieve, but then you break it down. Number four, out of those units, you can create teams. Then number five, you should prioritize your activities. The process flow must be absolutely systematic. As I've told you, one thing leads to the other. And so this is where I'm going to be recommending towards the end of my discussion in a few minutes that I would imagine every company, every organization, every parastatal would actually ensure that every one of the staff in any unit have project planning and management concepts. Because if you do not know the pathways, the project cycle, I want us to look at this service delivery, booking, ensuring you get a tourist from UK to come to go to wind impenetrable forests. The whole of that process, from the time of marketing your services to the time you deliver the tourists to the to wind impenetrable, it's a project. So you have mini project cycles. You deliver 10 of them, those, you know, you make sure the satisfaction levels, you are monitoring everything. So this is what I'm saying, prioritization of activities. What comes first? Is it booking a hotel, or is it ensuring the client knows the costs of coming to Windy, or is it, you understand, I think. So you need to have a full picture of a process flow, and this requires that members, staff teams have got competences and skills of project management. Number six, which is so critical, is we have to remember that each of those activities within the supply chain have got time limitations, and you should ensure that the time allocated plus also some reserve time for eventualities is estimated and resources are attached to that. This sounds very academic, but some of these frugal business people, very successful people who are exporting services, is because of their detail, the accuracy, the pragmatism. You know, being pragmatic is so critical in a successful exports promotion. So you need to ensure that the targets are there, and you need to know who is managing what. Of course, number 7, communication channels. You can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, how we need to monitor our communications. How can somebody, an interested tourist, who is in a tour and travel company, he has sent an email and you have spent the 12 hours without responding. And here you are, you send an email saying, I'm very sorry, you know, here in Africa, we have network issues. Very sorry, my dear. You can go and do some other activity, not that business. It has to be instant. We are so lucky. We are in the 4th industrial revolution. We have smart gadgets. We have pop-ups on our phones. The managers, the line officers must respond clearly and say, thank you so much for the interest. We are one of the best travel and tour companies. We'll get back to you in the next 12 hours. And if you promise, whoever you are bringing will wait. If you deliver before 12 hours, you earn. And therefore, that one will recommend you. So you have a marketing interest there. Last but not least, it's about the role of the CEO. You as the managing director, chief executive officer, you are the overall monitor. So you monitor the monitoring unit. Because if things go wrong, you are to blame. So as a manager, you have to be in control. And so you can only be in control if you have set up this structure as I have proposed. So as I come to the end of my few suggestions and provocative presentation, I want us to look at what will you be monitoring, the monitoring aspects. For merchandise, and I like the way the ED actually presented yesterday, he said money was the most, sellable commodity, then followed by services. But number 3, I think, are the merchandise and whatever the tangible things that people like to engage in. You're trading shirts and trading these potatoes, charcoal, and so on. Now, the aspects of procurement to delivery, processing to delivery, like procurement of services. This time, on the other side, it will be raw materials and components. But here is the procurement of a service. Under that, there are issues of purchase, payments, ensuring that the schedules are met. Then you have got the inspection about documentation. If you are bringing in tourists, you must be well conversant with migration regulations so that you do not create problems for your clients. So there are issues of documentation, there are issues of flight details. I mean, you should be in a better position. You should be like a real travel agent. You should know which airlines are reliable. You should know which hotels are going to disappoint you. So this is the information, the documentation. And then, of course, you need to do the inspections, and also you need to monitor issues to do with the insurance. For example, I don't know how many companies actually were taking on insurance. Look at the impact of COVID-19. If you are in the service industry, this has all sort of like evaporated. People were relying on a day-to-day income from their businesses. Even like imagine if you were relying on tourists. I mean, what insurance had you taken on? This is something that you need to monitor as well and check the markets and not to be exploited. I want to suggest a few things. What is your objective to do the monitoring? We already know you want to track improvements and quality of service delivery. So therefore, if you do it very well, you will diversify your markets. You can actually you can even venture into new markets. And yesterday I was very amazed and surprised. Zoom, which we are now using. Zoom started just as a very simple communication platform. Do you know that at the moment, they are now producing phones that are tailored towards Zoom, because these normal phones have some limitations. So you can imagine they ventured, an opportunity landed because of COVID-19, they expanded business, now they are going into phone production. Now, if you have a diversification strategy that arises out of your monitoring, taking the feedback from clients in good faith as part of your monitoring strategy, you have developed specific knowledge about target markets, you know, your communication is superb, you are reliable, you are a reliable business partner, you know, you can provide the service, then you can be sure of success in performance. Let me end with only 3 points. Recommendations. What should you do in order to be ahead of schedule with your monitoring for improved service delivery into export promotion? Number one, and I'm lucky, the previous speaker, Mr. Walusimbi, did an excellent job. He defined what you need to know about the organization. So I want to wrap what he said in only one of the recommendations. I have 3 recommendations. The first one, and I want to wrap it in what Mr. Walusimbi presented, you must have a 360-degree understanding of your company, not only your company, but other competing companies. Because I live in Munyonyo, along Gaba Road. Prior to COVID, there were no chickens on the road. They are now roasting chicken. One person started on the right-hand side as you proceed to Gaba. For those of you who are from Uganda, you know Kampala, you know Gaba Road. When I passed there a couple of weeks later, I saw 3 more that were coming on board. Now everywhere on the right and left-hand side, you will find these guys roasting chicken, and the people now park there and they eat. So this guy who started maybe was selling his chicken maybe 20,000, but now the competition that has come on board, you may find that now maybe it has dropped 15,000 because of this competition. So are you ready to actually know your internal dynamics of the company and also know how your competitors are coping? Number 2 recommendation. I think Exports Board promotion, please, if you want to, you should make it mandatory for people in business, for their own survival, to acquire the project management skills, to understand those pathways that lead to the other supply chain that I talked about, so that they know every link and what are the consequences of disrupting any of those links in the chain. Last but not least, let's benchmark with other successful businesses, similar or related. And I will tell you why. Look at Samsung. Samsung is a product that mimics, you know, the Apple product. They have decided to take the technology of Apple, but make it cheaper and available and very user-friendly. I do have Apple products. I have a Mac. I have some gadgets I use, but I also have Samsung. Now, what Samsung has done is to target numbers, whereas Apple has maintained a certain class. So do you want to go into service to make money, or do you want to just go for as a lavish thing? Whichever way you decide, monitoring what you are doing, not only finances, but as I've already mentioned, the 360 aspect will lead you to success. And I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Muhammad Zamhingo, we are really fully appreciative of what you have taken us through. I would like to appreciate the detail. Many of the companies that we have here and those that we work with normally avoid or have not put this particular area into their operations. And like you mentioned, some of them actually look at the CEOs as the monitors. So they are the ones who will do the tracking and who will follow up this and the other. But as the companies grow, we realize that they then begin to have issues. So we would like to encourage companies to actually have this, even though it starts with one person, like he has explained, have a unit, have somebody who will do the overall check, the back and forth. Has the truck left, or has the invoice been sent? Has this been done? And basically, this is what the whole aspect of monitoring talks about. And like he mentioned in his presentation, monitoring is not at the end. It is at the beginning, it is in the middle, it is at the end as well. So you monitor through your project. We have noted the kind of recommendations you make, and we shall see how to encourage the aspect of having project management skills being picked up by most of our companies. Through these kind of trainings, we are enabling companies get more aware of what they need to do, because like you appreciate, export of services is still a very young sector, growing, so we have a lot to put in place. So thank you so much for your presentation. It's unfortunate we couldn't see the presentation, but we will definitely be ready to receive what you put together, and we shall share it with all the participants.
Yes, I will send it immediately, and thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been a learning process, and one just take home for everybody. We should take advantage of the digital technologies in all these monitoring aspects. Even the tools, the previous paper-based tools can actually be moved online, and so you can invest in some software that can actually track to reduce the human error. So this is really something that is working, and prospective companies can actually benefit a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you too very much. So I hope you're still with us. In case of any questions, we shall have them come through at the end.
Yes,
so
thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being very patient and paying attention. We're now going into our last presentation, and it is by Stella Aikoro Masiga. She is one of our staff members at Uganda Export Promotion Board, and her role is basically to work with service exporters like you. So Stella will be taking us through the modes of service delivery and service packaging. Stella, you're welcome. We can now see your presentation. Please put the full screen and start off.
Good morning, everyone.
A little more louder, Stella. We can't hear you properly.
Now?
Yes, you can.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Stella Aikoro Masiga, and I'll be taking you through the channels of delivery for your services. And this entirely entails the modes of service export delivery, the categories of your services, the service packaging, service and service portfolio, then your staff capability on handling export procedures and documentation. I think you wonder why we emphasize a lot on the modes of service delivery. Like the ED said yesterday, and Mr. Mtahunga highlighted today, that the modes of service delivery is very relevant for the company because it will determine the regulations you have to deal with, and it also has a great impact on the pricing of your product and the quality of service, the packaging of your services. It's very, very important that you understand the modes and you choose the right mode for your service delivery. I will not go into it in detail, but the modes are four. There is cross-border supply, consumption abroad, commercial presence, and movement of natural persons. I think we are very clear on that front. These will sort of have an impact on your service package and how you sort of design your service for your foreign buyers. Let's look at the categories of your service. In one way or another, your company falls in one of these four categories of services. I think you're scratching your head to think on where you fall. Service industries and companies. These include all whose core product is a service, look at Serena. Their core is lodging and conferences. Uganda Airlines, their core is transportation, both human, and I think they're going to start cargo soon. Look at Centenary Bank. They look at financial services, loans, banking, and all that. Our very own hospital, Mulago, looks at health services. So your company in itself is the core product. Then services as products. They represent a wide range of intangible product offering that customers value and pay for in the marketplace. A clear example is when you're using your laptop for whatever that you're doing, there's those softwares that you use, either an antivirus or something. It's a service, but used in a product. It's very paramount for a product to actually run well. So you must be thinking of where your service falls in this case. Then customer service. It's a service provided in support of a company's products. Typically, companies do not charge for this. And a clear example is MTN. Their core product is voice and data. However, they have a customer service. Yeah. So we've seen our very own companies, especially the BPOs, having call centers for international buyers. And what happens ideally is that company will pay our Ugandan companies to handle this service. However, the client is either directly or most times indirectly charged for that service, but it's sometimes included in the price. So there is also derived service. Well, economists have divided thoughts about this, but derived service is a service that is provided, and in itself, it's the value derived from a physical product. Case in point is when you go to a hotel and you've gone to eat. What takes you there is actually not the food, but it's you're hungry. In essence, after eating this food, you are satisfied. That's why hotels put so much emphasis on the taste of food. They put so much emphasis on the quality of food that they give you, and of course the uniqueness of the food. So in essence, the feeling that you get after you've eaten the food is what the service is. For instance, you get a razor blade, or you go to barbering, or you go to a salon. The reason why you go to a salon is, yes, you have, maybe your beards have grown, your hair has grown, but in essence, what you feel is that confidence of you're clean shaven, your outlook is very, very good. The feeling is actually the service in itself. So while you're packaging, or while you're looking at your company, look at the category where your service falls. It sort of helps you package your product well. It sort of helps give you direction of who your buyers are, in a sense, or in line with our previous panelists or presenters. Let's go straight to service packaging and the service portfolio. When you're buying a good, it is sometimes customized to your needs. For example, if you're buying a car, like the ladies, sometimes we want smaller cars, or other guys like bigger cars. But when it comes to a service, it's not quite simple for a customer to know what they have received because of the intangibility aspect of it. So it's always very, very important that while you're doing your service package, you need to look at the tangible elements of a service package and the intangible elements. If we are looking at the tangible elements of your service package, we are looking at the items that are bought by the customer. Case in point is the restaurant meal. How do you present it? However much someone is going to eat and get satisfied, the core is for them to get satisfied, but your presentation is very important. If you're in IT, in essence, maybe someone wants to have a proper HR system or proper delivery of their goods, that is transport and logistics. How do you deliver your service? Is your service clean? Is your delivery fast? You need to put all those in in context. Then items whose status is altered by the service. In this case, look at health services. You go to a hospital, you've probably gotten an accident and you're in terrible shape. But when the service is offered and you leave the hospital, you are not the same as you went there. Look at a car repair. You get an accident and the car is totally damaged. The mechanic works on it, and before you realize it, the car is back in shape. So you need to look at that tangible element. What change can you put onto a service, onto your service, however much it's intangible? Then items that are peripheral rather than main parts of the package. For example, banks offer banking services and loans and all that. However, for them to clearly tangibilize their services, they'll always have bank checkbooks. When you when you go to a cinema, you'll find someone selling tickets for entry, and it's the only thing that can actually tangibilize the movie industry, maybe the chairs and all that. Then a hospital, when you go to a hospital, for those who have maybe insurance, you'll have that insurance card, or you'll have a file in the hospital. The core in actual sense is them treating you and you getting well. However, that tangibilizes their service package is actually the hospital appointment card. Then items that form part of the process. For example, technology. If you are in a bank, the core is providing banking services and loans and all that. However, you'll find they have the ATMs, there's vending machines in arcades and shops and supermarkets specific. Then you have to keep in mind that all these tangible features of a service, the marketer or you, the owner of the business, while you're exporting your service or while you're offering your service here, you need to include the costs in the price of the service as well. Then if you go to the intangible elements of a service package, these are services that accompany the core service. One of the intangible elements is a personal contact with your service provider. Look at a teacher or a lecturer at a university. The core is for the students to get knowledge, to enhance on their wisdom and also develop their career. However, it's important or it's necessary that they're in contact with the lecturer. Look at an IT assistant. Yes, your service is probably HR management or you're an internet service provider. However, there's that personal touch that you will have with someone to sort of help you troubleshoot or sort of help guide you, or you consult in case of anything. Look at a logistics manager. The essence of it is transporting your goods from one place to another. However, the logistics manager sort of breaks down maybe the package that they have, how much they'll charge a particular client who is exporting their goods or something. So you need to have in mind that personal contact in the service business is very, very key. However much it's intangible, it has a great impact. Then the atmosphere generated. Case in point is a lecturer. When a lecturer is in class, everyone will pay attention. Okay, when you're in a hospital, you enter and you know this is actually a health center or it's a hospital. So the atmosphere is one of the intangible elements. So every organization or you're a company out there, your atmosphere needs to sort of reflect what your service offers. Just like a hospital, just like a lecture room, like a music stadium, you'll find a lot of noise and all that. So you need to sort of pay attention to that intangible element because it communicates a lot. Then the emotion felt by the customer. Case in point, if you go to, let me say, maybe a massage parlor, you have that peace of mind in the end. It's an intangible element. When you go to a salon or something, that self-esteem you have with is an intangible element. So when someone tells you how they feel about your service, just keep in mind that that is an intangible element of your service package, because the customer only experiences all these because they are intangible and they contribute to customer satisfaction. To continue, in order to build a sensible service package, you need to create linkages between your core and your supplementary services. So like Dr. Walusimbi said, you need to clearly define your company, define your values, your goals, what you're doing, your core service. And the core service essentially is the service package that is the primary purpose of your transaction with your customer. Okay. And the supplementary service is a backup for the core service. For example, we have restaurants that deliver food home. However, their core is actually the food. However, they deliver. If you're an IT firm and you're offering your solutions and all that, your supplementary is actually your service center, your customer service center. It's a supplementary. It helps you deliver your service quickly and efficiently. So in essence, your staff need to understand and need to properly link the core service to the supplementary service, because it is a chain from the beginning of the service to the end. And in the services industry, it is defined as a service flower. And this is how it looks like. The core product or the core service is right in the middle, and all the others that surround it are actually very key elements that your organization needs to follow, that your employees need to understand. And looking at information, it's the beginner. Customers need relevant information on price, on your service hours, on instructions for use, directions to the delivery, and all that. So this is an era where clients or people seek a lot of information, and if you're not able to provide it, your competitor will be able to provide that information readily, and you will lose on that client. So it's very, very important that you have information readily available, either on your website, either with your company employees, anywhere that you can make your information available. Kindly please have it. The second is order taking. The process should be polite, clear, fast, and accurate. Like the use of online tickets, it's clear. You choose either your seat, it's taken, it's printed and given to you. So you should not let your clients lag behind on information on, if I'm going to take an order, what is required. It should be fast and the delivery should be done well. Then the invoicing, it should be accurate, fast, clear and timely, so that it can ease payment for your foreign buyer. The moment your foreign buyer has challenges paying your service, either they will default or they take long. I don't want to say that those who have not been paid is because there's a problem in their invoicing. That might be entirely an issue on the buyer side. However, you should not give reason for someone not to pay you internally. Then consultations, this is more like an after sale. If a client has already bought your service, you should be readily available to give them consultation to help them understand the service more. It is said that when you're offering a service, the customer is always right. Even if they're wrong, they're always right unless you prove them wrong. And if you prove them wrong, you should prove them wrong with evidence. And when you prove them wrong, please provide a solution, but lovingly, not arrogantly to prove that they're wrong. Remember, they pay for the service. So once you give them solutions lovingly, in essence, they will give you referrals. So you need to keep that in mind. And also you need to manage expectations. You need to understand what the client expects and what you're able to deliver. It sort of creates a trust in between you or your employees and the buyer. if someone asks you to do, maybe deliver a big consignment and you do not have the trucks available, or you do not have the personnel to actually do the work, please be honest. Manage the client's expectations by being honest and tell them what you have or what you can actually do at that point. When you're doing your service package, it's very paramount that you have a service catalog and a service portfolio. A service catalog is a listing of all your products and services that the company currently offers to the users. The defining characteristic of a service catalog is that lists only items that are currently provided by the organization. It sort of streamlines the way users interact with the service desk. Case in point is if you call a helpline, let me say MTN, you hear them for mobile money, for calls, for data, like sort of that's a catalog for them, because it's voice, but it's a catalog. So you see, it sort of restricts or streamlines the way you talk to the final user. If you can quickly get help right here before you talk to the final customer care advisor, it makes your life quite easier. And this is an example of a company catalog. Some catalogs are online, that someone will just click to what they actually want, or they can quickly select what they actually want to buy, because it sort of shows everything that a business can actually offer. Yeah, it's very clear and it's very open. Unless there's something beyond this that you can't offer, that's when this buyer will then go to the customer care or try to contact you. So it's very important that you have your information clearly outlined, that when the client is looking for information, you come to his mind first because you have everything readily available. Then what is a service portfolio? A service portfolio is a complete listing of all your services. It includes the following component: the catalog, which we looked at, which is a listing of all your current products; then the service pipeline, which is products that are being worked on, or it's in the pipeline. It's a service that I can term it as the service development pipeline. These are services that you're trying to develop, that you're trying to grow for your foreign market or for that target market. They are not listed out to the market until they are ready and tested. Then the retired service catalog is services that have been in the catalog, reached the pipeline, and are now phased out. Case in point here is, look at Apple. Apple has maybe iPhone 5s, but they do not produce them anymore. However, there are still users who have these phones, so they still they have a service portfolio, just in case someone comes up and they have a complaint or they have a concern about that particular product or service, you're able to be helped. So it's very key that you do not phase out, you do not sort of clearly not publish your retired products, because there are people who used that product before. This is just a rough design or a diagram of your portfolio management. Remember, we said the portfolio, service portfolio, has your catalog, your products in a pipeline, and your retired services. And this is entirely internal. So you have to know how to manage it. You have to know how to handle it. Here, in the beginning, is several service concepts that people come up, and it's influenced by the customers, because customers will keep telling you, we need this, we want this, remove this. That is essentially customization. And then there is also the market, maybe a niche that you want to start. Yeah, so the service concepts are majorly influenced by the market, by the customers, and these concepts are sent to service design. You start developing your service, and then you transition it to operation. All right. Now, when you transition it operation, this is your service catalog. It's now the service is in play, it's in the market, people are actually buying it. However, here it's in the pipeline. This is entirely internal. It doesn't have to be shared with the clients, but this one is internal and external. Then your retired services. Keep in mind that the portfolio management will sort of help you get resources to see where you should phase out and what you should bring in, and where you should get resources either from customers, either from the savings. You need to properly manage your portfolio in order to serve the market right, and of course to achieve company objectives. And service portfolio management is very key because it makes sure that the service provider has a proper mix of services to meet the overall service strategy, just like how Dr. Walusimbi and Mr. Mtahunga talked about. The portfolio management also ensures that the entry or exit of a service from any stage is dependent on the approval of your funding. It sort of helps you make the right decision when it comes to the services that you're offering, to your funding in the organization, because one of the major key issues in an organization is actually financing. So the service portfolio management helps you to see how much every service brings in and what you should phase out or what you should add on to a service. The major objectives of portfolio management normally are to enable a service provider to investigate and make decisions regarding which services need to be provided and which services need to be retired. It also helps to document every service planned, operated by the service provider for future reference. This is the pipeline. It helps you to manage a definite service portfolio, which includes a clear articulation of your business needs that are addressed by each service and business needs it supports. It helps you to run new services through a set of activities and procedures which are standardized, so that you do not go out there and give raw stuff. You need to give something that is clearly defined, something that is up to the standards and up to class. It also helps you to evaluate the degree to which each and every service of theirs enables a service to provide to achieve the overall service strategy. It also helps you control services being offered under different conditions and investments. These conditions rather might be the modes that you're delivering your service in. It helps you to review each service under the continuous service improvement process. For instance, if you're doing IT, or let me say MTN has very bad network, it is a continuing service. However, it helps you to see where the loopholes are and you improve on your service. It also helps to provide information based on a service. It helps provide, it helps provide information best for service catalog through the service portfolio. It helps you track investment in service throughout each service life cycle. It's also prudent to note that while you're doing your portfolio management, you will face a few challenges. And this is probably lack of access to information, which is required to businesses. In services, we have a few issues or challenges in getting this information. Absence of formal project management or change management, just like how Dr. Mohammed said, you need to understand, or we need to actively understand project management skills. We need to have them. So if you do not have a project management team, it will sort of quite be challenging to manage it internally. And also another challenge is the service portfolio, which is focused only on the service provider's aspect other than the customer's aspect. Many times organizations try to think for customers. They do not go out there to actually understand what the customer wants or what the customer needs are. You do it entirely on your end. And before you realize it, you fail miserably, or your product does not take off, your service, sorry, does not take off. So you need to clearly and properly manage your service portfolio in order to sell your service beyond the borders. So that was it from me. In case of any questions, I'm readily available. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stella. Thank you very, very much. Stella's presentation, I think, was quite loaded. And in a few words, what she was trying to bring out is for us to properly define our services. I think she started by giving an example or taking us through how to define our services. What exactly are we selling? When you're in the hotel business, what exactly are you selling? Is it the building? Is it the food? What solution are you providing to whoever is interested in your service? She also went ahead to show us how we're able to define the intangibility aspect. In other words, the experience of the different our different consumers of our service. Stella, maybe you properly remove your presentation. We are not able to get a full screen. So Stella also defined or helped us understand how to package your service. Yeah, and she brought out aspects of developing a catalog when you're dealing with aspects of clients and you're offering different services. They need to understand exactly what your service is about. So then you need to appreciate your service and define it depending on what you're offering. So the catalog give us that detail. And then finally, she brought out the portfolio, which brings out the whole line. So Stella, thank you so much for that. I know we have given you so much information. Some of you may be wondering how to put this to use. But our request is that we are here to serve you. We are committed to work with you and handhold you. Actually, part of our export readiness drive is to make sure we handhold whoever is on our assessment, whoever we have registered here. We work with you through all these, through your export journey. So don't imagine that we train you and leave you there, or we identify buyers and let you go. We are interested in knowing how you're moving day by day. So contact us, call us, involve us in your businesses. That's why we're here, because we appreciate the journey to getting a client or a buyer of your services is not a one-day thing. Okay. Yeah. So I'll go straight to the questions. I think we've only received one question, if I'm not mistaken. I saw one question for Dr. Mohammed. I'll just check through the chat quickly. Yes, somebody was asking, sorry, how do you balance monitoring and the reluctant attitude of staff who don't want to be monitored? So how do you have that balance? So Mr. Mohammed, you could just respond to that. I haven't received any further questions. Whoever has a question, please post it as Mr. Mohammed answers them.
Okay, thank you so much, Brenda, and thanks to the questioner. In the first place, monitoring and evaluation for purposes of improving service delivery there's no option of not having it. So it has to be embedded. As I mentioned, we have got to consider even a budget component. When we are planning the budgets for our organizations, our parastatals, our companies, there must be a sizable percentage of the annual budget that goes into monitoring. Now, how do we deal with the staff who may have some mindset issues about monitoring? I think the main reason why most staff feel negative about monitoring and evaluation is because of the approaches and methodologies that are used by most organizations. They look at monitoring and evaluation or quality assurance directorates or units as police units within the organizations. It's like a fault-finding unit. And we need actually to use a contemporary approach which looks at monitoring and evaluation as value for money. Actually, if you do not critique your methods, you do not listen to the feedback, however distasteful they may be, then you have a challenge. So how do we overcome that problem? There must be a deliberate plan for continuous training of staff of all the units. First of all, to appreciate the need for them to know their expected targets, the timelines, and then their reporting structures. So this is one. Then two, the importance of the client. You know, if you do not have consumers of your service or product, then you are as good as not establishing a company. You know this old slogan that the client is your master. And so client satisfaction and also having charters for client satisfaction is very, very important. You know, a document that lays out how do you assess satisfaction by clients. So you need to train this staff, and it should be part of the induction that you deliberately do. And don't stop at the induction. You continuously evaluate, and this process does not stop as long as you are in the business. And so if you do that, you have a deliberate effort and also not a hierarchical structure that this is how we do monitoring. You design the tools, take people through them, and then naturally, when you are trying to find out achievement of targets, people will volunteer. Last but not least, you can incentivize this process. You can actually say, whoever meets the targets, this is the reward. It doesn't have to be monetary. It could be any other thing within the organization that will now become self-driven. People know that once you meet a target, in Europe, I know most of you maybe have had an exposure. I know the ED was in Canada, was in the US and other places in the UK. You know, you would find like an employee of the week. So, but it's not a common practice here. Banks, you know, hotels, they also have these methods, but unfortunately the culture is not there. And it comes all the way from the training that we have. So for us as education institutions, we need to have a linkage of helping companies to retrain the staff. Of course, we graduate them, but then we need also to get feedback so that we inform the sectors that the people who are employed, who are coming from education institutions, should have another flavor once they get into the job. So this is my response to this question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Muhammad. We fully appreciate your response. Maybe I could just add something small to that. I think also the way you would get your staff involved is to get them to be part of the putting together, you know, the monitoring tools or framework. Normally, as especially when you're still small, you tend to do everything with a smaller team, and then everybody else looks at it as that is their business. That is, you know, I'm not part of it. I'm just an employee. So there's need for ownership with you know, lower cadres and your lower staff members. So when you involve them in setting up the whole process, the whole monitoring and M&E, it helps them also realize that, look, I'm part of this. I was part of those who set these targets. I should be able to work to achieving that. So involvement is able to draw ownership. Then We have another question. Let me see what it says. Some companies have challenges of managerial attitude, especially those privately owned. Most operations depend on the mood and feelings of the proprietors rather than the ideal business ethics. How best can such individuals be helped to appreciate business ethics? So, Mr. Muhammad, you want to take that up as well?
That is a very hard nut to crack, actually. Yesterday when they were trying to define, there was a gentleman, I can't remember, one of the panelists, he actually structured organizations as big, as small, as micro. And if you looked at the characteristics of each one of those, I think this question, the person who is asking this question refers to one of those categories. If somebody starts a business, especially in the private sector, and they would like to cling to highly centralize everything, you can be sure that such a business does not have a future. So, but how do you are an employee, you'd like to perform to your maximum. Definitely you have got to use the structures. If there is a board, if there are committees, if there are structures, informal, actually they have to be informal because you may risk losing your job in some situations. But if you are pragmatic enough and you are result oriented and you overperform in your unit, there's a likelihood that this owner who is clinging so much to their, is not even the CEO, maybe is basically the owner of the business, who would like to micromanage, then you can learn and experience there, look for his peers or her peers, and then be able to influence. But this requires a lot of time, and it is so engaging. You can only have the spirit to sustain that change mindset and practice of business if you think you have a future in that organization. So basically, this happens in education institutions, in other sectors, especially private, where people establish businesses just for the sake of making money. And it is tough. And I fully agree and appreciate the background of this particular person.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Any other questions? We still have a few minutes to the end of our session today. So I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear more questions. So if there's anybody who has questions, please go ahead and raise them. If you don't want to type, we could actually give you an opportunity to speak. We'll unmute your mic and then you can speak. So if you can raise your hand, we can be able to give you that opportunity. Okay, let me see who's someone is.
I think I've seen Paul Onek is putting up his hand, or maybe this is because of the other first question.
Paul, I will allow you to talk. You can unmute your mic and raise your question. Paul, are you able to unmute your mic?
Hello?
Yes, Paul. Is that Paul?
That is Ochen. Ochen is the one who was talking, I think. Yeah.
Hello? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We said that we should not struggle. We can ask Uganda Export Promotion Board for some of this information about trade analysis. Is there any specific person with Uganda Export Promotion that we can contact for this trade information?
Yes, you could contact myself or Stella. we will be able to guide you depending on what the information is. I think you have the details of our contacts. You could even send an email or call us, and we can get you the information.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, Brenda, you can hear me?
Yes, we can, Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much for the training for the last 2 days. It has really been very powerful. Thank you to all the facilitators and the panelists. Just this question is to the Uganda Export Promotion Board, especially given the current period of COVID-19 and the lockdown and the restrictions in movement. I know that the previous years you have actually been organizing B2B meetings and also taking some of the companies to some trade fairs. So like what is your plan with the context of COVID-19 restrictions for this year, next year, if this situation is yet to continue, especially focusing on certain markets, which really we can go as a country, because one thing I've learned in the export is that when you synergize, it is easier to, get the market on board, as opposed to like every company trying out their luck on several countries. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul, for your question. In as far as exhibitions, like you've said, it's quite a challenge for us to have the physical exhibitions. But what we have been having, especially with products, are the hybrid exhibitions where it's done virtually, and then their products are either done on video and exhibited, and then we can link with the different buyers. So we haven't had one for services yet, but that would be the kind of direction we'll be going until we are sure that it is safe for companies to travel. So worldwide, the mode has been now changed to virtual exhibitions and virtual activities and so on. So we will be using that kind of mode. If you have a specific trade fair that you're interested in, you could contact us and we see how we then link with some of the organizers to get you involved.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Silence, meaning that we are all good. We have no more questions. Okay. Yes, Donald, I can see your hand is up. Please proceed.
I'm requesting that you share with us the contact addresses of all the panelists and also their presentation. I haven't seen any since we started this virtual conference.
Okay. Thank you, Donald, for that question. We shall do that. Apologies if you haven't gotten the last training presentations. We should have sent them out by now, but I'll follow through that and we will send you the details for today. And like you have requested, we shall also send details of the contacts for the presenters. So I hope we have your full details. My assumption is that all those that are on this training have submitted their details through the export readiness assessment. So we shall use those details that we have in there to get back to you with all this information. Thank you.
Thank you.
So any other question? Any other question? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Muhammad, for the appreciation. We also like to thank you so much. I'd like to, first of all, thank our panelists for the very hard work they did to put the very fruitful presentations together. I think our presentations had quite a bit of content that you will need to go back to and actually read through. We're trying to build very professional exporters that will address the needs of buyers across the global market. So that's why we are going into aggressive training and to make sure that we are able to get all our exporters on board to structure their businesses. Many of us start small, but when we grow bigger, we need to be able to streamline and put processes in place, put your structures together, because the kind of buyers you're going to address don't know that you're a small person. They know that you have the product they need and they can get it at a certain time, at the right price and so on. So please take what we are doing very seriously. Ask us questions. We are here for you. That's why we all get up to come to work to be able to serve you. So thank you so much for this. Thank you for the participants who have been able to participate and remain until the end. So we shall send you the information as promised. We shall also be sharing our trainings going forward. We request that if you have any needs in terms of your service exports, whether it is on your documents, whether it's on issues to do with your buyers and whatever, please contact us and we will be able to serve you. Thank you. Have a very good evening and afternoon. Okay, the meeting is closed. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.